been mentioned by Sheikh Salih al-Sheikh. He has a nice book called هذه مفاهيمنا, and this book that the Sheikh wrote was a refutation of a caller to shirk called Muhammad Alawi al-Maliki. This is an individual who spent a lot of efforts. He's a Sufi. He's a caller to grave worship, and he wrote a book called he wrote a book called Understandings That Need to Be Revised and Corrected. So what he's trying to do in this book is that he's trying to argue and justify for calling upon the dead and seeking rescue through them and so on and so forth. The calling, worshipping the graves and the dead. So the Sheikh Salih al-Sheikh, he wrote a book, and it's called هذه مفاهيمنا. This is our understanding, as a refutation of that individual. But he explains in this book that historically speaking, shirk, that when we look historically, we see that the shirk that is found, there are two types of shirk. The shirk of the people of Nuh alayhi salam, and the shirk of the people of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And all shirk in essence kind of branches off from these two types of shirk. The first shirk is the shirk of the people of Nuh alayhi salam, and this shirk is what we call the shirk of the when you start. It's like the shirk of exaggeration of the righteous people. That you exaggerate in the righteous people, where you see that you see piety from them, you see rectitude from them, you see they are pious, and so you see the manifestation of this piety, and then that leads to a type of exaggeration in their status and in their worth, and then this eventually leads to ghulu, and it leads to worshipping them, and so it leads to seeking intercession through them. So this becomes now the shirk of shafa'ah. The shirk of shafa'ah. So the shirk of the people of Nuh alayhi salam is the shirk of soliciting intercession, of seeking intercession from the dead, after having venerated them and exaggerated regarding them. This is the shirk of the people of Nuh alayhi salam. And as for the shirk of the people of Ibrahim alayhi salam, we see that these people, the people of Ibrahim alayhi salam, that these people were looking at the secrets of the universe. They would investigate and study the stars, the moons, the universe, and they would be intrigued by what they saw, the power, the sheer power and the might of the phenomenon that they see, the stars and the moons, and and so what they did is that they came more from a philosophical angle, more from a scientific philosophical angle, and so they began to ascribe to the things in the universe, like the stars and the planets and so on and so forth, and they began to ascribe the regulation of the universe to these planetary bodies, right? So they came more from an angle of science and philosophy and observation and reflection, and becoming wonderstruck and held in awe with respect to the things that they see, and then leading to claiming that, for example, the planets and the bodies, that they have a role in regulating the universe, in bringing about good, in repelling evil, and so on and so forth. And so therefore then they were led to shirk in that manner. So now these two ways, the shirk of the people of Nuh alayhi salam and the shirk of the people of Ibrahim alayhi salam, these are the two, if you like, the foundations of shirk, and from that is all, is from what all other types and manifestations of shirk appear in the various civilizations and nations that came after the people of Nuh and the people of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So, but we are looking here at the people of Nuh alayhi salam, and we see that these people, what they did is that they fell into ghulu. We discussed ghulu in the last lesson. And so they exceeded the limits in praising and venerating, and what is similar to that. Allah mentions about them in the Quran, in Surah Nuh. Allah says about these people, وَقَالُوا, they said, the people of Nuh alayhi salam, they said, لَا تَذَرُنَّ آلِهَتَكُمْ وَلَا تَذَرُنَّ وَدَّا وَلَا سُوَاءَ وَلَا يَغُوثَ وَلَا يَعُوقَ وَنَسْرًا وَقَدْ أَضَلُّوا كَثِيرًا وَلَا تَزِدِ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا ضَلَالًا. Allah says about these people, the people of Nuh, they said, do not abandon your gods, don't abandon your deities. Do not abandon Wad and Suwa and Yaghuth and Ya'uq and Nasr. Don't abandon these. And then Allah says, and indeed they have misguided many a people. And the wrongdoers are not increased except in misguidance. So here there are 5 names mentioned in this verse. Wad, Suwa, Yaghuth, Ya'uq and Nasr. And these are the names of righteous people from the people of Nuh alayhi salam. When these people died, they were righteous people. Their people made idols, or they made statues of them, and then they gave them the names of those dead people. So this is now Wad, this is Suwa, this is Ya'uq, Yaghuth, Nasr, and they gave them these names. And then what they really intended to do was to venerate the dead people and to respect them, and so that they would never ever forget these righteous people, so that they could be reminded of doing the good deeds, because they wanted the piety of these people to be constantly remembered. So they built these manifestations and statues so that they would always be remembered. They put them in the houses. The intent wasn't to actually worship these idols, but just to be remembered of the piety of these people. However, what happened is that over the passing of generations, when Iblis came to them and beguiled them and misguided them, and ignorance, knowledge dissipated and ignorance became set in, then the people came who thought that the forefathers were actually worshipping these idols, and they began to worship these idols. So we find this mentioned in some of the explanations, like in the statement of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma. So he commented upon this verse and he said that the idols first appeared, the worship of idols first appeared in the people of Nuh and amongst the Arabs, and then amongst the Arabs after that. So what happened is that the Wad was an idol that they made, and it was used, or it was a god for a tribe called Kalb, the Kalb tribe. And then he mentions the place, Dawmat al-Jandal, just a place somewhere. And likewise Suwa was an idol, and it was for another tribe called Al-Hudayl. And Yaghuth was for another tribe called Murad, and then it was taken by some other tribes, and eventually it came to people in Sabah. And Ya'uq was for another tribe called Al-Hamdan, and Nasr was for another tribe called for another tribe from the branches of Dhul Kala'. So in other words, all these different tribes had inherited the gods of the people of Nuh alayhi salam, and this came to the Arabs. So they used to worship them. And what happened that originally they were the names of righteous men from the people of Nuh. When those men died, Shaitan inspired them to set up statues and representations so that they could always be reminded of them in the gatherings. And so then when they died, then the generations came afterwards, they forgot what the initial reason was. And then they began to take these statues and idols as objects of worship. And we see something similar is reported by Ibn Jarir al-Tabari rahimahullah, when he comments upon the same verse. And he says, narrating from Muhammad bin Qais, who said that these were a righteous people from Bani Adam, and they used to have followers who used to follow them. And when they died, their followers and their associates used to say that if only we made representations of these people, it would inspire in us and instill us to worship Allah and to be reminded of them and to worship. And so then they made these representations. And so when these people died, another generation came. Iblis came to them, and Iblis said to them that your forefathers used to worship those idols, and they used to receive rain through worshipping them. And so then these people began to worship them, and this is how shirk entered into the ummah for the very first time. So we see here that there are two tribulations that these people got put through. The first tribulation is that they started hanging around the graves, and they started spending time around the graves, with the reason that they wanted to be reminded of the righteous people. And by being reminded constantly of the righteous people, they in turn would remain righteous. So this is the initial reason, the initial justification that they used. And the second fitna that they fell into and combined is that they made representations of these people. Made statues and representations, and they put them in their gatherings. So we see that these are some of the manifestations of the shirk and how it emerged. Unfortunately, we see the same thing happening in the Muslim Ummah. And in fact, when we come to the period after Islam, when the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he came and he removed the Jahiliyyah and he brought Islam and guidance and Tawheed, and we see that how did shirk again enter into the Ummah? And the reason it entered into the Ummah was that there was a group of people who were called, now these people, there were many civilizations that were present at the time Islam came, and there were groups of these people who, when they wanted to come towards the Muslims, they saw that the best way to come and address the Muslims was to first become Shiites. So they would become Rafidis, they would become Shias. And they would come to the Muslims and start, saying that they love Ahlul Bayt, and because this was the easiest route to come and to win the trust of the Muslims. So these people would come, and what they were trying to do is they were trying to merge the Greek philosophy and whatever science was present in that time. And they came, and these people are known as the Batiniyyah. The name given to these people, they're called the Batiniyyah. Batiniyyah, this word, it refers to people who believe that there is like hidden secret knowledge, which is other than revelation, which can be received, and through which the true realities and the real truth is known, right? And that this knowledge is something that is better than revelation, because revelation is just for the general people, just for the common people. But this philosophy and this, the true knowledge is something that comes through philosophy and science and so on and so forth. So what these people did is they came and they put on the face of Shiism, and then they began to, in the 3rd century, they began to secretly write 51 papers. They wrote 51 papers. And they kept it a secret. They were so secretive that it wasn't until the 4th century that the Muslims actually realized what these people were doing. So what they did was they wrote 51 papers, and the name of these people is called Ikhwan as-Safa. Ikhwan as-Safa. It's called the Brethren of Purity. This is what they were known as. They were Batini Ismailis. So in these papers, what they were basically doing is that they were trying to combine and unite between the Quran and the Sharia, and between whatever science and philosophy they had present at the time. And from the things that they brought in was the attachment to the dead, and the attachment to the graves, and worship of the dead and worship of the graves. And so what happened is that when they spread these writings, obviously they found, you see that amongst the Muslims are those people who are already present, and they are weak, and they find that the Islamic legislations and the Shara'i are heavy upon them, they are burdensome upon them. So naturally they are looking for something easy, because the hearts and the souls are weak, and they can't, they are weak in performing all of the 5 prayers and the fasting and the Hajj and the giving zakah and so on and so forth, and all of, right? So these are weak souls, and who are seeking ease. So then these people came along, and then they argued and presented this idea of the graves, and worshipping them and becoming close to them and becoming close to Allah by way of them and seeking their intercession and so on and so forth. And these are the kind of things they included within these 51 papers that they secretly spread amongst the Muslims. So then by the time that in the 4th century we saw that the Rafidi, the Ismailis, they managed to gain power in Egypt. And these are the what we call the Ubaydiyin, they gained power in the 5th century in this area. And then they began to openly call to, this kind of thing, this grave worship, association with the dead, and so on and so forth. And this is really how the actual worship of the dead, association with the graves, and all of these doubts about tawassul, shafa'ah, wasila, and so on and so forth, how it all really came in. And then Sufism is actually the twin of Shiism. There's a connection between, they both draw from the same. Sufism actually comes from Shiism. And so then this is how this then, in the 5th century onwards, we saw that it became a spread, and we saw that the association with the dead was made to be as if it is part and parcel of Islam. But we can see from this how the origin of this shirk after Islam came. So we passed the time of Nuh al-Islam, we now passed the time of Ibrahim al-Islam, we now in the Muslim Ummah, we see how it came about was through these people, these Batiniyya, Ismailiyya, and how they themselves brought the philosophy of the Greeks and their